Things in the Pokemon hobby have gotten a little expensive. Which I don't even believe that's a real auction. So I thought, why not talk about some singles today, and why not talk about 20 cards that I like for under $20. I'm also going to be giving you a couple of honorable mentions, and if you have any cards that you think that I missed for under $20, please leave them in the comments. So without further ado, these are 20 Pokemon cards that I like for under $20. The first card I like is Cleaver. I think it looks pretty awesome. I really like the artwork here. We even get a person on the bottom. I believe that's a trainer. I'm not entirely sure. It's probably a trainer. It looks like it, so that's pretty cool. And also on top of that, it is a Scyther evolution, which I didn't even know Scyther had an evolution, so that was pretty cool. This card is dirt cheap. You can get it for like $2. It's pretty insane how cheap it is, and I think it looks awesome. So if you're a fan of this artwork or this Pokemon, definitely check it out. Another honorable mention that everybody knows about is the 151 Pikachu. This is a great card. I'm not even going to talk about this too much, but there's so many Pokemon in the background that everybody's loving this card, and I don't blame them. I'm one of those people. And this card can be had for around $7 or $8 right now, which is a pretty great deal. Next up, I have this Pikachu promo. I think that this one is very colorful, very nice, and another honorable mention that I just wanted to throw in here because although it's not my personal favorite, I do see a lot of people enjoying this artwork, especially if you grew up with this generation of Pokemon. Like if you could imagine that was a Squirtle, a Charmander, and a Bulbasaur on there, man, I would definitely think this card would be a lot cooler, but that's just because it relates to me. So personally, I don't think this one relates to me, but I do think that this one has a lot of potential investment wise, and if you're a collector, maybe you like this artwork as well. This card can be picked up for around $10, and although the top listing is a graded listing, I just brought that in here because I wanted to show that you see how cheap it is. I mean, that's a CGC 10, and we're talking $26 before shipping. The next honorable mention I have is the Machoke from 151. Now, personally, upon first viewing, I wasn't a huge fan of this card. I wasn't a major fan of the art style, but it slowly started to grow on me, and just the fact that it's a bunch of Machokes helping someone move, I think that it's an interesting and clever, jokey, funny kind of card, and I personally am actually starting to enjoy it a lot more the more I see it. And the price is pretty competitive because I feel like a lot of people don't give this card too much love either. You can get this card for like $2 to $4, and I think for that price, it's a pretty good deal. I was scrolling through TCG Player and I saw this one and I just had to add it to the list. This is a beautiful card, a beautiful Zekrom card. If you like Zekrom, this is definitely probably one of the cooler arts that I've seen of him. I'm not super familiar with Zekrom, but this art definitely popped out to me, so I appreciated it and I wanted to show you guys it. And the price is pretty cheap as well. This one can be had for anywhere from like $4 to $6. Pretty competitive pricing for such a cool artwork. Okay, that's it for the honorable mentions. Now we're getting into the real suggestions. These are the real top 20 cards that I personally like, and I'm kind of cheating here because it's supposed to be a 20 under 20 video, but I chose 4 cards for my first pick, and I know it's cheating, but hear me out. Each card is below 20, and you might be able to find a listing for them close to like 25, all 4 for 25, 30, give or take. But yeah, all these cards are under $20 each. But yeah, the cards I'm referring to are the VMAX, Climax, Eevee, and Evolutions. I really think that these cards are super dope. They're so eye-catching. Everybody seems to like these cards. And for such a cheap price, I really do think that they are undervalued right now. You can pick up these for under $20 each, and you can grab the set from like $25 to $35 for all 4, which personally I think is really competitive. Next up, I have the Lugia V-Star. This is the beautiful gold Lugia from Paradigm Trigger. I think that this card looks awesome. There's also a gold Snorlax that I really like, but I went with the Lugia on this list just because I think it just looks so great, and also I'm a fan of Paradigm Trigger in general because there's just a bunch of Lugias in the set, and I've invested in it personally. But that being said, I really do like this card. I think the gold cards that also have the regular colors in them, so you can see the normal color of the Pokemon with the shiny gold around them, I just think they look awesome. This card is relatively inexpensive. You can get it for around $20. This is one of the more expensive cards on the list, but I do think that it is also one of the more rare cards on the list, so for that reason, I do personally think that $20 to $21-ish is pretty good for this. Next up, I have the Mewtwo from 151. Everybody likes Mewtwo. Who doesn't like Mewtwo? And also, I think that this card artwork, although it's kind of hard to see, I feel like it would look better in person. I think it looks great. Like him just looking down on the city like a superhero. I think it just looks awesome. And this card is selling for around $5, give or take. And for $5 for one of these, I think that that's going to be a good investment. The $5, now again, this is the Japanese version, but $5 for a Mewtwo with an artwork like this, I feel like this will probably age rather well. It really depends if we start seeing 151 reprints and all this crazy stuff, but depending on the pull rate, you know, yada yada. But honestly, I do think for around $5, if you're a collector, this is a beautiful card to have in your collection. Next up, I have the Latios from Paradise Dragona. Now, I love this card. I love this artwork, the sunset, the golden hour. It just looks beautiful. This is one of the newer cards on this list, but I will say that this is a beautiful card that is probably going to appreciate over time because it's just so awesome. But it's hard to say because you don't know if reprints are coming and how easy it is to pull this. I'm not entirely sure, but as far as cards for under $20 go, I think that this is a beautiful one. This card's selling for around $6 to $7, and for $6 to $7, again, I think it's a great value. Next up, this is one of the most underrated cards on this list. I do not hear people talking about this card at all, and I think it's one of the nicer artworks on the list. I think it's really nice, and it's shockingly cheap. This is shockingly cheap. This Lapras only costs around like $2 to $3. And I think it looks awesome. Why does nobody talk about this card? What's the problem? What is the problem with this card? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's like a $2 card. What's happening? Next up is the Drowsy with this very unique art style. I'm a big fan of this card. I actually like the art style. I like that there's a Ferris wheel in the background and it just feels like you're on the boardwalk or something coming from New Jersey. I don't know. I really like that. It feels like home. And I think it's one of the more unique artworks that I've ever seen on a Pokemon card. I've seen people talking about it in English, and I've seen that the price is allegedly rising in English, and for Japanese, it's pretty cheap. It's pretty competitive. The value is there for sure. It's only around $5 for this card. So if you're a collector and you just want to get the art, this is a steal. $5, why not? Next up, one of the most underrated cards in English and in Japanese, the Groudon. This is one of the coolest artworks of a dope Pokemon that a lot of people like, and the price seems rather competitive for how cool this card is. In my opinion, I feel like it's severely undervalued. The price in the Japanese market has been rising a little bit, but you can still get this card for around $12, and if you look really hard, you might be able to find it for $10 still. And on top of that, if you're a fan of Tyranitar, you can get a bundle deal where you can get both of them for under $20, which I think is a pretty good combo and a steal. I personally didn't get the Tyranitar as well, but I was on the fence about it for a long time because that is also a very beautiful card for under $20. Okay, this card might be one of the most underrated cards. I don't see a lot of people talk about this card. I really don't, and it's beautiful, and it's only around $10, and that is the Mew from V-Star Universe. There's listings for under $10. You can find this card for around $7.99, and it's such a nice looking card. There's a bunch of different Pokemon in frame, which I always am a fan of, and I just feel like for that price, I feel like this is underrated. I feel like this is a sleeper card that investors will do good on long term. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this card? Because I don't hear anybody talking about it, and I'm wondering, like, am I the only person that thinks that this is an absolute value and I should totally stock up on some of these? Another card. This is another card that I have purchased for myself, for my collection, because I like the way it looks so much, and I don't hear anybody talk about this card. I don't hear anybody talk about this card, and that is the Magnemite from Dream League. This card is beautiful. It is a card with a Magnemite being polished by Lieutenant Surge, and the Magnemite looks happy, and he's sitting there all proud of his hard work, and I think that it's an awesome card. I love cards like Pikachu with Ash and Red and stuff, like the ones where you can see the trainer prominently in the shot. I love it, and to be a trainer that I grew up with, like Lieutenant Surge, it's fantastic. It's one of my favorites. I'm tempted to get that Vileplume that has Erica laying next to it because I just like those trainers, and I want to collect cards with them in it as well because I love the gym heroes and, you know, Leader Stadium, Challenge from the Darkness, all that stuff. But yeah, man, this card I think is severely underrated. You can get this card for around $7, $8, And again, I don't understand why nobody else is buying this card. Nobody else is talking about this card. It's beautiful. I love it. And yeah, Magnemite. I mean, I know it's a Magnemite, so like nobody's like loves Magnemite, right? But still, I mean, it's real to me. It's really a Lieutenant Surge card. That's what it is to me. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on this card in the comments because nobody talks about this one. Next up, I have one of my favorite artworks by far from 151. I love the Zapdos artwork. The Blastoise artwork is cool. There's a lot of artworks that I really like. The Venusaur, like all that stuff. But I gotta say, one of my favorite artworks from Pokemon 151 is by far the Poliwhirl. Poliwhirl 2049 or Poliwick. I just love this artwork. This like Blade Runner, John Wick type with the rain with the neon. I love it so much. I love it so much. And you can get this card for like $4 or $5. $4 or $5. Seriously? Like $4 or $5? And in my opinion, this is one of, if not the coolest artworks in Pokemon 151. I know that sounds crazy, but this is really up there. I like the Zapdos. I'm weird. I even like the Caterpie artwork. People don't seem to like that one, shooting through the leaf, but I like that one. But this one, the Poliwhirl one, I'm a huge fan. Next up, I have the Magneton from Super Electric Breaker. This is a card that has the same style of artwork as that beautiful Magikarp card that everybody loved, and I am a huge fan of this one. I think it looks awesome, and it's dirt cheap. You can get it for less than $10, and I think for less than $10, this is a card that has artwork that is beyond that. This artwork is like a $30 artwork if you ask me, but $10, I think it's great. Next up, I have Paldean Tauros from Triplet Beat. No one really talks about this card. I saw Pokebeard bring it up a little bit, and he mentioned that he wishes it was a regular Tauros, but this one still looks cool, and I kind of feel the same way. I wish it was a regular Tauros just because I'm all about the Kanto Pokemon, but I gotta say, the black really makes it look good. The black with the Paldean Tauros, it looks great. It pops. And another Sunset card. I'm a sucker for the Sunset Pokemon cards, and this one with the leading lines and the Dutch angle, it looks awesome. And yet again, this is another card that nobody cares about. The artwork is great, but nobody seems to want it. You could get this card for like $3, and for me, I feel like I'm on the fence whether or not I should buy this. If it was a regular Tauros, I probably would have bought it already just because I love the art so much, but either way, I'm still on the fence because I do think it's a beautiful card. Next up, I have the Kingdra from VMAX Climax. Another awesome looking card. I really like this. It's not my favorite Pokemon, but I do really love how the waves are coming up and just the whole look of this card, the aesthetic, the fact that you could still see the trainer in it a little bit. I think that's cool. I do like seeing these Pokemon cards where you can see the trainer's relationship with the Pokemon. I do like those a lot, and I think that this one is no exception. It looks great, and for around $3, give or take, I feel like that's a pretty good price. Next up, this is probably one of the most shocking cards on the list, the Q-Font from Night Wanderer. I didn't know that this was so cheap. I looked at the artwork and I was like, wow, that's a nice looking card, and you could get it for like $2. This card is like selling for like $2. Next up, this is a card I actually have, the Moltres and Zapdos and Articuno GX. I love this card. I think it's beautiful. I think it's underrated, undervalued. This card is only going for less than $10. You can get it for around like $8, $10 to $8, and I feel like for that price, the artwork is so cool, and the fact that you get all 3 legendary birds on one card, it just looks dope. It looks so dope. Next up, I have the Entei V from V-Star Universe. This card looks awesome. One of my favorite legendary dogs. It's hard now. I kind of go back and forth between the different dogs of which is my favorite, and it really is based on like different cards and all that stuff. There's so many factors, but back in the day, Entei was my favorite legendary dog, hands down. So this card art of him looks really dope. I really like it. Now, it is a little cartoonish, I will say that. It would be cool if it was a little darker and more realistic, but as far as the cartoonish vibe, I'm also a fan of this as well. I do like the thick outlines on Entei, and the price is rather cheap. This is another card that you can get, like the Groudon, for around $12-ish. Another legendary dog, we have the Raikou from V-Star Universe. This card looks awesome. I feel like this card doesn't get a lot of love because the other 2 legendary dog cards seem to be more popular, but I think that this one actually looks really cool. The fact that we're keeping up with him and he's just running at like the speed of light, this is like kind of reminds me of the Flash. I just think it looks great, and this one's actually really cheap. This is probably the cheapest of the legendary dogs at around $10 or $11. The Mimikyu V from VMAX Climax. I really like this one. I'm a big fan of horror movies, so for me, this horror movie one where he's watching TV and the shadow is on the wall and the trainer's in the background all shocked, I just think it looks great. I'm a big fan. Now this is another one of the more expensive cards. This one's going to sell for around $21, so we're kind of breaking that barrier a little bit, but there are listings that are sub 20, so I'm adding it into this list because I just think it's really cool, and as a horror fan, I love the artwork. Next up, we have another card that I actually own, and that is the Mewtwo and Mew GX. This card looks dope. I'm a big fan of this card. I have it. I used to have a couple copies until I sold them, but I do think that this is a beautiful card that's featuring two Pokemon that everyone loves. And this card is rather cheap as well. You can get it for under $10 for the most part, and I feel like for under $10 to have a Mew and Mewtwo on the same card, and it looks really cool, like the perspective and how they're reaching out towards the camera. I just think it looks awesome. And last but certainly not least, I have Professor Oak's setup. Now this is the English card. I'm referring to the Japanese card, but the photo that I'm using is actually the English version, and I'm just doing that because the Japanese version had this weird yellow tint to it. But yeah, Professor Oak's setup I think is another relatively affordable card, and one of my favorites that I own in my collection. I just love it. Professor Oak, and the fact that he's sitting there with his 3 Pokeballs. It's just so reminiscent of all the video games, like growing up with Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Sapphire. Don't ask me why I always got the blue ones, I don't know. But yeah, just picking your starter Pokemon, Professor Oak, the man that started it all. You know, he let Ash go on his journey, giving him his stuff, and it's just so... It's such a cool card. It's such a great card. Nobody talks about this card. This is another card that is well under $20. You can get it for around like $15, give or take, and it's just like, why? Why does no one like this card? Why does no one talk about this card? I think it's awesome. So those are my top 20 cards under $20. I really think that they're absolutely beautiful. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What are some cards that you like that are around $20 or below $20 preferably? I'd love to hear them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.